Welcome to Hague Talks, the podcast, where we hear directly from some of the Hague Talks community about how they're setting peace and justice in motion. Let's meet the Honourable Judge Amina Augie of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. As you'll hear, Judge Augie has a warmth that makes you forget you're talking to a judge, a Supreme Court judge even, and she has a long-term view that comes with her decades of experience. I'm Janet Anderson, and this conversation was recorded at the core of the Hague Justice Week 2023, as you'll hear. So here she is in The Hague, soaking in the international law atmosphere.
I've been working for 45 straight years. I'll retire in September. So for me, it's like icing on the cake that all those years of work, bit by bit, brick by brick, step by step, one judgment at a time, that an opportunity would come for me to be able to talk to a larger audience, not just Nigerians, but to a larger audience. So in a way, it's an achievement, I would think, and an honor and a privilege.
The name The Hague evokes different things for different people. What does it evoke for you?
What comes to mind would be justice, peace. The Hague has always been in everybody's memory. The good part about it is that my mother, even before I was going to be appointed a judge and all that, all she just kept saying is, I just want you to be at The Hague. I just want you to be at the ICJ or the World Court. So when I was now going to come to talk here, she lives in Chicago, in America. So when I was going to talk, I told my sister, tell mommy that, okay, that's her dream for me to be at The Hague has finally come. So you can imagine what that evokes in terms of, we've always known about The Hague, and it's more like a place where you go to ensure that justice and peace prevails. This is my 10th trip. I've been here twice before, and the second time was in 2019 for the same walking visit. And I'm very impressed with the way everything is done. There's a culture and standard that has prevailed, and which I go back and tell my colleagues, that tell everybody that, it's an epitome of what the judicial atmosphere should be like, and how everybody is passionate about what they're doing, and they're the best of the best. Anytime you're talking, like when we go to ICJ, you're talking to the judges there, and you know that they are really the best of the best, that they're brilliant, they know what they're doing, there's still this fire in their eyes, there's the passion for the job. All of them that I met 4 years ago, still have that vibrancy. And you'd be surprised, because usually when you stay in a job for a long time, you get jaded, you get burnt out, or lose that belief. You just think you're disillusioned with, what am I achieving in all this? Have I really done anything? What have I done?
I asked Judge Augie if that's how she feels about her work in Nigerian courts, how difficult it is to feel that you've really made a difference.
No, funny enough, I don't have that, because I take each case as it comes. I write each judgment. I like to say that each judgment takes my soul. So I'm faced with, this is what I'm writing now. So I'm faced with that, and it consumes me till it's done. Then the next one comes. So without knowing it, the day just goes by. And because I am fired up by each case is different. So where the law would apply and convict somebody, the same law, if you look at the facts, would find out and you acquit. So each case has its own twist. Each case has to be unraveled. Each case has to be like, you're taking it step by step. I write judgments not because I'm writing for anybody. It's for me. If you read it, I'm unraveling. I don't know what the end will be, but I'm unraveling it. This is the issue. These are the facts. If you apply the law, these are the law. If you look at it, okay, this way, then it takes me to the next issue. So I'm trying to guide myself to where I'm supposed to get to. So that's the way I write.
In her day job, Judge Augie has been focused on domestic law, but international law cuts across those national boundaries. There can be a perception that international law is being imposed from the outside, So I wondered what Judge Augie's feel is of how international law is practiced across the African continent, considering all the differences in the different states and the different national courts.
The world has become so small, but there's a tendency for us judges to gear towards domestic law. There's this jealousy that says we have our own authorities, we have our own cases, why will we have to go and import something when we have our own? But then there are peculiar cases, there are peculiar instances where you have to have recourse to international law.
Beyond judges, there is a sense sometimes that international law is not always applied equally, and that maybe Africa sometimes feels that it's not necessarily given the space that it should be given in order to say, well, what's important for Africa in international law?
Now, that would be quite individualistic for each country, because don't forget, African setup, we have the East Africans, we have the South Africans, we have the West Africans, we have Central Africa. So everyone has their own peculiarities. And then you have the civil law and the common law countries. So with all those peculiarities, it's difficult to say, oh, international law will now apply across the board, or that we would now look up to international law to guide the way the African countries apply their laws, which would be like saying applying colonialism all over again. Trying to impose international law principles and say, oh, let it be sacrosanct. We are more or less indirectly bringing in colonialism into trying to make us to be just the same as anybody else in the world that are more developed, that have better institutions to administer law and justice, that have been time-tested. We're all young countries. We're still coming to grasp with our internal politics, the way things work, and whether you like it or not, the corruption has really destabilized and destroyed a lot of things. So you want things to work, you bring the money, you do it, and then somebody siphons it, or it doesn't go where it's supposed to go, it's going into people's pockets. So there's a lot to grapple with internally. So before we can think to
the international level.
Yes, international level, because it's better developed. Like I said, you come to The Hague, you see how it's meant to be done. And then you go back home and you see your lapses and weaknesses. But then you see, because a lot of people won't have that advantage to come here, that's what they know. They don't see anything else.
Amina Augie is one of the few women in higher positions in the Nigerian justice system. How did that happen?
I was the sixth to get there. It was difficult because it was like the men everywhere else. The high courts got filled up with women, and there was this thing of no, we're not going to allow them in. If we allow them in, they're going to take over the whole place. So I think it was under the President Obasanjo. He now threatened to bring somebody else from outside, a professor, to go directly to the Supreme Court or something. So I'm told anyway. And so they had to let the first woman in. And she later became the Chief Justice of Nigeria. And then we trickled in.
But we trickled in.
Yes, we trickled in one after the other. We came in batches like that, trickled in.
With now only 4 women in the Supreme Court in Nigeria, I asked Judge Augie when she expects to see parity and equal numbers of women. And she explains that because of their system of appointment, it's hard to tell.
We have 6 zones. We have 36 states, but we have 6 zones of the country. And because of the constitution that says federal character, the court must comprise of justices from each political zone. So that one zone may have 6, 7 states and all that. So appointments to the Supreme Court is now based on when there's a vacancy for your zone. So if your zone puts forward and it's a woman that ends up getting there, all well and good. If they don't, and the men insist that we're not going to allow these women to go there, it's what your zone, who is picked from your zone now that comes in. And then because you have thousands of judges wanting to now get to the Supreme Court we only had 17 Supreme Court justices. Now it's increased to 21, but right now we are actually just 13. We're just overworked because in Nigeria, an appeal is as of right. So no matter how stupid the case is from the lowest court of the country, it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. So we are totally overworked. It's incredible. We're the only court in the world that does that. And we've been trying to fight for a constitutional amendment so that some things can stop at the High Court, some things can stop at the Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court can deal with just, policy. Now, to get that constitutional amendment is what we've been fighting for, and nobody seems to be doing anything. So I'm hoping that they will push for that. I have to write a valedictory speech when I retire on the 3rd of September. And I really don't know what to say, but I'm trying to tell myself that maybe I should focus on looking at things like that and say, hey, if this is the last thing I say as a judge in Nigeria after 45 years of service, maybe I should just point out the areas that need to be looked at to make sure that judges that follow after me don't go through the same pain and agony and rigors and everything that those of us now are going through. And I won't be jealous. I won't be jealous if things change after me, because I had to do what I had to do. And maybe in the circumstances that we're in is where I've come out the best. There are some people that can't function when things are crazy or you can't face the world. But there are some, like a tea bag, you put hot water, you put them in that hot water and they actually excel because it suits who they are. So my prayer has always been to let me be where I can be all that I can be. You can spread it to others. So it's a philosophy that sort of says, if I can say something and touch one person, and I would think that, yes, I've done something. I spoke yesterday at the HagueTalks, and so far today I've had people come up to me. One lady she's Portuguese, but she lives here. She came and told me a story of how yesterday they were stuck in the car they were in or something. The truck they were in stopped, and two of them women had to come out to push the car, and that they were looking at them and say, yeah, two strong women. When things were hard, they moved. And she said, I just kept thinking about you. You just finished speaking. And I said, I'm going to take on that thing, push, And I looked and I said, this is what I said yesterday. I had no idea that somebody would be inspired enough to feel that, I can actually step up to move and get things done.
What do you think gives that inspiration?
You don't teach, but they can pick up from you. They can pick up and realize that you can focus. You can, don't let the world distract you from where you're going. There should be that sense of focus, that idea that I am worthy. I can do much more. I can help. By being me, I've been able to help other people to go there. There's a focus that takes you outside yourself. And most times when I give talks like this, I talk about the 2002. I was in, my husband had died earlier, 2001, so I was in a dark place and didn't feel as if, so I was just reading something about a pianist, one of those classical, pianists who was the best in the world, a girl, but had an accident and lost some fingers. And she was in despair, languishing, desperate, depressed and all that. And then her mother says to her, your life is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to God. And I just kept saying, have I really done that thing that I can say at all my skills, gifts, abilities? Because we all have. Each one of us have strengths that you have no idea. Each one of us have weaknesses that seem to be weaknesses, but are strengths when put in a certain position. So if you dwell on, this is a weakness, you don't now look for the opportunity, or when the opportunity comes up, to use that perceived weakness as the strength that fits in. Look at the key to the doors. All those cuts, fit into a lock. So that's how we all are. There's always a door that your peculiar key can open where you can be the best that you can be.
Thanks, Judge Augie, for sitting down with Hague Talks, the podcast. Great advice there. Check out all the podcasts for Hague Talks. This first collection is around Hague Justice Week, with some of the great people setting peace and justice in motion. And don't forget to like and share Hague Talks, the podcast.